Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the nice introduction. Nice to be back at the BioStock scene. And I'm here to talk about awareness, which the previous speaker did today. And we all focus on a lot of awareness, but we also focus on treating the syndrome. So we think us have a very good candidate for a therapeutic solution. More about that later. This is just a forward-looking statement, of course. It's a mandatory for a public company, so I have to have it there. So we have been talking about the World Sepsis Day today, and I will not go into much. It will be already too much information, but I would say that we are sponsors of the Sepsis Foundation in Sweden, and we're also supporters of the Global Sepsis Alliance, which is situated in Germany. And of course, we work our butts off to really address awareness, because the sooner you get in, the better chance you have to survive a sepsis occurrence. And if you don't, Aptahem will be there for them that needs it. Upcoming events in this awareness area, we have this today, of course. And as Jonas just recently mentioned, we have the Sepsis Awareness Superhero Challenge. And we will be part of that challenge, this 10-mile run swim in the Gothenburg archipelago, as Jonas just mentioned. And in November, we have an event that is from the medical faculty in Lund, Malmö, which is also the Sepsis Foundation will be involved in, and we will be there and take part in that event. So we're looking forward to report from that. So Aptahem, yeah, we are public, I just said that. And we are a smaller biotech company. We are semi-virtual. We have some personnel, but we're not a big company. We hire a lot of expertise into the company. It's a very good way of running companies, especially in this country when funding and sponsoring is not that generous, let's say like that. Anyway, we specialize in aptamers and aptamer-based drugs, and we're looking at this at targeting inflammatory sicknesses in the acute domain. And that's where we want to be with the sepsis, because it's an acute syndrome that occurs. And we have a lead candidate, Aptahem, I just mentioned that, and we are pretty far with that one, and we have very good results in the preclinical models, I should say that. So we are very hopeful about having a cure against sepsis in later stages. In the early stages, of course, you use antibiotics and so forth. And we also consider us having a world-class portfolio in knowledge, in patents, and in results that we have so far. And of course, we wouldn't be able to have this if we didn't have a fantastic team. We have collected a lot of fantastic experts in the company, from the cradle to goal, when it comes to development of a new drug. So I'm very happy to have that team around me. And this is a team, few faces on the team, management team. And as I said, we have a total coverage from start to goal when it comes to develop a drug. And we also have the scientific backgrounds, knowledges, and so forth, startup companies, running companies, deal making, license making, etc. But I want to mention a few people here. If you look at the upper left, it's Luisa Jedlina. She is the scientific officer of Aptahem, and she is actually the reason to Aptahem started once. She found the pathway, the commercial pathway for using the fantastic unique group of aptamers that we have, which are drug candidates. So she actually set off the company. It was her knowledge in immunology and in parasitology that made it happen. And later, in the upper right, Anders Bülow came in as chairman of the scientific advisory board, and he's also the CMO now. This year he became that. And he was the one that took it from top down. He looked at what would the market need and what should we do to get there. And then he split that down. And he came into the company in a situation where we saw new results from our lead candidate. We saw that it had a character that we couldn't really expect, and that was the anti-inflammatory character, what we could see there. And putting that together, and Anders put some thought to it together with Luisa, and they said, let's try it in the toughest inflammatory model there is, sepsis. So we did, and the results were better than we could imagine, actually. And that started a new strategy for the company some time ago. And Jonas already said it, we are probably the only company in Sweden working with the therapeutics to address sepsis syndrome. And I hope there will be others, so we could collaborate or, competition, healthy competition, of course. And it's again about awareness and also do something for this. It's a tough area to be in. Many pharma companies did a lot of effort, but without having success getting a drug on the market. So it is a tough area, and that has to do with a multitude amplitude response what the sepsis infection gives you in the body. It's not a single occurrence, it's many occurrences. I will come back to that later. We are one of handful in the world as we see us. I mean, there's a lot of academic efforts going around. We know this, and I will come back to that. We have collaboration with one of those efforts in the world. And of course, Big Pharma is focusing quite a lot now. I have meetings with Big Pharma that are very interested and have a new belief in that could be some drug candidates to actually address this tough syndrome. And that makes us pretty unique as we see it. I hope others also see that. And in combination with our first-in-class, let's say, matter, which is our aptamers, which is a new type of chemistry molecules, we have a really strong platform to stand on. And these aptamers I've been talking about, how did we discover them? This I could talk all day about. It's a very fascinating thing. You see the mosquito on the left side, and this injects malaria parasites into the bloodstream of the human being. And to survive in the human being, it creates a protein to bind red blood cells for survival, and that's how it works. And this parasite is a master. There's no better biochemist in the whole world than a parasite. They can optimize the chemistry, adapt to the surrounding inside the human host. So it's have been optimized through generations to just sit there and do its job. And that's fantastic. I mean, this is so optimized, you can't find a better producer of a molecule. So we looked at this protein. We wanted to release it. We wanted to dissolve it. So we came up with a group of aptamers. And aptamers are built by blocks to form this structure that you see to the right. So you can make a perfect build around a certain molecule that you would like to inhibit. So we have made a blocker molecule or some kind of an antibody type of molecule. So what we are doing here that we make an anti-molecule of this. So we inhibit further coagulation as we see it when the protein binds these cells. So that was the first, and we have evidence, and that's for the patent we have. And we used that to very good effort when we started the company as an anticoagulant drug, and it had excellent results in this area. But as you know, we made a strategic change some time ago and went into sepsis when we discovered that the anticoagulation was driven by the anti-inflammatory mechanism. So there we are today. So it's a combination, it does both, which is quite unique, I must say. But if you look at the structure, it's quite big. It has a lot of sites where things can happen. And as you see, there's anti-inflammatory, immunostimulating, anticoagulant. We see all this when we measure from animal studies in preclinic. It's quite fascinating to see. It's hard to believe. Some people are very tough to believe how it works. But we have a fantastic molecule, or a group of molecules that we work with. So, I was being an Ulrika before me probably talked about sepsis, and sepsis is a syndrome or an occurrence of something. It's actually initiated by an infection. It could be virus, bacteria, very common, as you treat it with antibiotics. It could be fungi, other things. It can be a cancer patient that just finished the treatment, and you're very vulnerable to the surrounding area. You have high counts of blood, white blood cells, which makes you very susceptible for other infections. So it's very common that cancer patients die from this. Heart patients have infections. You have lung embolies, whatever. So other sicknesses give in a second step sepsis. So that's important to remember. It's not the first thing, it's a syndrome that occurs. And the syndrome is when the body totally go haywire. I mean, it's a systematic inflammatory response in the body. The whole body is affected. And Ulrika mentioned this, that the most common way is that the body is reacting, it's counteracting, and that does it by lowering the blood pressure. Lowering the blood pressure means you get less oxygen to the vital organs, like kidneys, liver, heart, brain. And that leads to a dysfunction, a multiple dysfunction of organs, and that leads to death, sadly. Because if the organs can't work, you die. That's the sad story here. And yeah, I've already been talking about that we did a strategy change, and we fought hard and long. And when we saw the initial results of our lead candidate, we realized that we have a chance here to address the cascading process, what the systematic inflammatory response means. So, and also the fact that there's no real treatments out there. So, I mean, it's a big need in this area, and I hope more will come in. So I welcome competition, of course, because this is about the awareness and then how you to treat this. And I'm talking about imbalances and systematic conditions here. I just want to show here two different scenarios. The left scenario shows what happens in the body. I'll talk about the multitude of mechanism here. And we have the anti-inflammatory response, we have the pro-inflammatory response, we have the immunosuppression. And that throws everything off. One thing's happened here. Body rushes over to try to take care of this incident, but before it does, the whole scenario changes. So actually the positive way of the body thinking, taking care of something, actually becomes a negative thing for the body. And this is why you have this total chaotic, uncontrollable situation in the body, where you have a lower blood pressure, you can have massive coagulation, leads to massive strokes, or you can have massive bleedings. The body totally loses the control. Body is very good on regulating everything, but when it can't keep up with this very fierce and fast infection, it goes totally imbalanced, and that's what we want to show here. If you then look at the right side, this is what we see, or a theory about what Apta1 does, and of course our preclinical results have shown and supported what we have here, that we counterbalance this. So we go and inhibit these processes happening because it has a multi-purpose. So if you just had a drug that didn't do only do one of these inflammatory parts, like anti-inflammatory response, you would still have the other parts to address. So we address the whole problem as we see. And the results speak for themselves in preclinical that we actually do this. But more about that on the next slide. And we have very nice results. And we start with improved survival. That's the key, you know. That's the ultimate biomarker. Will the patient survive? Yes. So we have significant survival. We have also dose response in when we do this. So we can dose up and see better efficiency when we dose up. And that's very important for the medical situation, that you can play and analyze the patient and do optimal treatment for that one. And we're talking about repeated dosing. We have made dosing at different time points during this occurrence of sepsis infection, or stimulated as such. And we see that we have significant survival during that time, even later in the stage, which is a very, very good indication indeed. And that means also we can dose more than once and twice. We can keep and follow the patient to make an optimal, at least the scenario is like that, an optimal treatment for the patient and save the patient. And we already talked about the restored blood circulation. This is key. And when we do our preclinical studies in animal models, we see that the blood pressure is withheld. It doesn't change. So with Apta1, we see the blood pressure is kept. And of course, with the blood pressure kept, we have oxygen in the system, meaning that the organs fare very well. And we see that on the typical biomarkers that they use in a trauma unit or a hospital or whatever you do, typical test you do if you have a suspicion that you have some infection, we look at the same markers. And when we look at these markers in our studies, we see that they are back to normal status, or better than the group that didn't have Apta1. So we have a lot of evidence in these preclinical models speaking very good for the case of counterbalance and get the body into right balance and get. Safety profile. We have seen through the years that Apta1 fares very well in different systems, and we have made acute tox studies to show that we have a very high ceiling. And with that, we always kept with at least 10 times margin when we dose animals, just to keep it in a sane area. And just currently we are doing the preclinical toxicology program, and we will report about that later, but that's the real toxicology program. But still we have a feeling where we have been from the beginning with acute tox. And a little about our program. You have probably read, some of you, that we have just announced some delays, and I will try to describe where we are right now. If you look at the two standing pillars, that's where we are at the moment. And then we start with the non-GLP toxicology study. It's finished in practical ways, but now we have the analysis, we have the documentation, the final reports, etc., etc. But it fared positively. This much we can say today. But we will announce, this will be an interim report. This is the first part of the preclinical toxicology program. The next part is what you see, that's called GLP toxicology studies. And that's the one that is the regulatory part of it, that leads to a document that we will file to the FDA, EMA, or the Läkemedelsverket in Sweden to be approved to go into clinic 1 with Apta1. And on the side, we do other things. We do mechanistic studies and so forth, but we also have a big NHP study, non-human primate, and that's as close as we can come to humans. So this is why it's interesting for us to study Apta1 in this case. And we recently announced that we will prolong this due to that we saw very good tox results. So we want to expand and do higher concentrations, and this is to just see how far we can go and what get the window for where we can dose, and also having more statistics, because anything that can be patented we will patent, because that means money in the bank in the future. That's how it works, and that also increases the attractiveness for the company. I would also like to say another point up there. We need to make some additional non-GMP manufacturing, because we use so much in the non-GLP tox. We couldn't really expect that much consumption, but it happened. And as a final thing, we are doing a GMP manufacturing. The GMP is a good manufacturing practice. That means it's a regulatory thing. And we have to have GMP approved substance to put it into man. Otherwise, it will not be approved. So there where we are at the moment. We do other things as well. And due to that, we filed a new patent application last year. We can now be a little bit more open about what we are doing. So we have started a collaboration with a hospital in Seattle. Very interesting, and we are now discussing with a big European institute to do the same there. I have to come back to that later. Academic publications is on the way, because now we don't have to be tight-lipped any longer. We are very happy that we can start public announcement of what we have so far. And there's a lot of other things around it, like mechanistic studies that we're doing. Just to show the market case, because if we don't have market case, no one will be interested to take us to market, so that's how it is. But you see the incidences here, top 5 European countries and United States. There are many incidences, and of course the mortality is very high, as Ulrika spoken before about. We did a very modest estimate. We look only at the anti-inflammatory treatment, not the antibiotics. Just so you see the 32% in Europe and 11% in US. But anyway, we look how much each patient would cost and the scenario, and we're looking at the multi-billion US dollars per year, which is what's needed to attract the big drakes to come in and take a look at us. Okay, just to sum up a little, we think we have, and we feel we have a very good expertise. We have a fantastic portfolio, we have results, we have patents, we have built the team from start to goal kind of setup, and we are very happy about that, of course. Pipelines, Apta1 you know now. We also started Apta2 as a second pipeline, and this is just initial studies, but it has Apta1-like properties so far what we tested. But we have to do a lot of more investigation before we can say more about this, and we will announce that. But it will be in the inflammatory domain, for sure, we can see that. And we have a third one, and all these are protected by patents, so all these are our main candidates, and these are, of course, potential pipelines, which Apta1 is the first one. We also look at a partnering license deal, etc. It's important for us to find someone to care us for it, because it's multi-million-dollar to bring us to the market. We will not be able to do this ourselves, of course, so I'm working very much with that. And of course, we can look to build value in the company and build the volume of the company by in-licensing or acquisition of new drugs, for example, just to build more momentum into the company and to make it more secure and not being seen as a one-trick pony. And we already not a one-trick pony, as we have 3 potential pipelines already. And just to summarize, I will not say so much. I mean, I've said it all already, but we have a strong foundation, and it's resting on a novel drug candidates in form of the aptamers. And I think I will hold there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikael.
You're welcome.
Very interesting to see this development going on in this area that's in such a big need for a new therapy, basically. If you should sum it up, what makes your case interesting as far as that it could be a solution for an acute therapy?
Well, there is no drug on the market today that do what we can do with this. At least the indications are like this. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things going on in the academic section, so we know this. This is why we will have collaborations with some of them. But there's a renewed interest, because as we have a novel type of chemistry, I mean, the hopes are up again that there is something that can actually address this in a way that Apta1 does, because it has a multi-effect. So I think that's crucial for yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
And being then one of the few actors in this field, I know you were at the Nordic Life Science Days earlier this week, and probably had some meetings there. What kind of level of interest do you see when you speak to?
Well, there are those who are very interested in this area, of course. It's for the bigger players like pharma, it's a strategic decision. Either you do or do you do not. And you can have the most interesting profile. It doesn't matter. If they're not strategically interested, you will not look at it. But there are quite some that are looking into this field, as I just mentioned during my talk. And there is an interest, and it is interest for the aptamers' behavior, the profile, not only for the case of sepsis, because we see that it treats a lot of inflammatory responses in the body, the most crucial ones, in other areas too. But we've chosen to go into sepsis because it's such an awful syndrome. So we choose to do that because it's so powerful, our aptamers, and that's why we choose that. But we have talks and discussions about other applications with this aptamer, because it's so multifaceted in its behavior.
And if you're familiar with biotech and drug development, you know that things take time. But you were still you were forced to announce that you had a bit of a delay recently, or are looking at a delay. Can you tell us something about what happened?
Yeah, I mean, despite all good measures and efforts that we do, and we now announce timelines, these things happen, sadly, for most. And we had a case here of that we used up all our drug for the toxicology studies, and we need to make more. And then we had some challenge with the GMP. It's a totally different thing to make GMP. It's surrounded by a lot of regulatory things, and you have to be very precise when you do this and keep a lot of things. And we haven't reached the purity levels that we need, as we need to put it into man, and also to get the approval from the authorities. So I mean, but our own goals are very high. So that's what we're working now. So yeah.
And this problem is being handled?
This is being handled right now, of course, yes. So we are moving forward all the time.
And speaking of moving forward, and we only have a short moment left, but what do you see as the most important upcoming milestones for you then, for Aptahem?
Well, we have to finalize the talks, the total talks. I mean, now we do the first half, and then we do the second half, the GLP study, as you saw in the presentation. And when that's done, we summarize everything, and we put the file together, go to the authorities, and ask for them to look at it. We want to do this. We want to shoot it up in humans and test it for safety in humans. We want to see, do they get black spots, or do they get delirious or something, or they just feel fine. That's good. Then you're fine to the next step. But that's what it's all about. I think that's a milestone. And of course, these smaller milestones now to crack the purity thing. We have an NHP study that I think will be very interesting when we conclude the results from that round. We may have new patents around the corner, publications, other collaboration, very important collaboration, I would say, to aid our own development. It will be very important. And we're so happy that we can be more public about it now, when we have been tight-lipped for all these years. And I feel sorry for the market, waiting for more information all the time. We want to tell you everything, but the market and everything about patents and so forth puts them on us to be quite tight-lipped. It's very frustrating, trust me. I would like to tell you as much as possible. That's how it is.
We're looking forward to an outspoken Aptahem coming up then.
Are we not already?
Yeah, even more so.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mikael.
Thank you very much.